Right.
Welcome, everybody. I'm Anita Crawley, and I'm an educational consultant focusing on equity, online learning, and student support working at Hartnell College in Salinas, California. We are fortunate to have Karen and James here today with what promises to be a really fun and interesting and engaging discussion. So let me do a few housekeeping tasks, and then I'm going to get out of your way. As you know, this session is being recorded and it will be shared with you as soon as the Peralta team has a chance to do a little bit of cleanup. There's Zoom captioning at the bottom. You can mouse over and select the options if you would like to see text as we're going through the presentation. And we encourage you to put questions in the chat. We will use some of the Zoom tools to engage you in discussion. Let me know if there are any questions.
All right.
I'm going to pass it over to Karen. Are you going to start? It's all yours.
Great. Hi, everybody. This is my first chance to come to a Peralta conference, so I'm really excited, and I hopefully have brought a gnarly little topic for us all to sort through. It is not something I think we have the answers to, so we're really hoping that together as a community, we can really talk through some of the discussions. So my name is Karen Bellnier. I'm the Director of Digital Innovation here at Mitchell College, and we'll tell you a little bit more about what that actually means as we get through the presentation. James, do you want to introduce yourself, and I'll work on sharing the screen while I'm at it.
Sure. So good morning, everybody, or it's afternoon for us here, so on the East Coast. So thank you for connecting with us, giving us an opportunity to chat with you guys about this sort of issue that primarily Karen, and then I've been kind of an advisor and helper as she's figured a lot of our stuff out over the last little less than a year, I would say. I am an associate professor of business here and chair of the business department here at Mitchell College, and got sucked into being an advisor for the work that Karen is doing. And so we'll talk more about that and the great collaboration that she and I have had over the last few months as we've been really trying to brainstorm and figure out some of these challenging issues. So thank you for the opportunity to collaborate with you guys and really hopefully learn from you as we tease out the questions that we're trying to deal with. And hopefully, I think others are probably facing some of the same challenges. And so it'll be really good to open up a collaboration about this.
Absolutely. I am definitely planning on taking notes as well. I did send to you, Anita, a couple of questions for the poll, if you want to kind of get those ready. What we thought we'd bring to you today is the questions that the conference has been addressing and that field and wide has been addressing around things like opportunity, responsibility, and challenges as it relates to equity, but framing it in the context of workforce learning. So I wanted to go through a little bit of context, and then we can kind of get rolling. So first of all, some of this is pretty high level, and you may already be familiar with a lot of this, but workforce learning or continuing education or whatever that office is for you is typically a non-credit space that's very career and industry focused. It's where sometimes adult education lives there. There's all kinds of things that aren't part of the degree seeking, credit bearing activities at the institution happen. And there's been a lot of attention in this area in the last few years, certainly as we've turned into conversations around microcredentials and certificates and stacking and all these alternative pathways to get into degrees or to get education. But right now, nobody's really counting it. How many learners come through this different path through our institutions. And I've seen some estimates that suggest that there could be as many or more learners coming through our halls through this pathway than through our existing kind of what we think about as our traditional students. And that certainly it can contribute as much or more financially to our institutions. And a lot of us are doing it, right? Most of our schools have some form of continuing education involved, and it's it's rapidly growing. It's a massive space. But these offices, in part because they're often tend to be in other places, work different hours, the learners come in different ways. They don't tend to be part of a lot of our larger institutional conversations. They often are understaffed. Their goals are set different pressures inside of the institution, that they tend to be more about numbers and finances in ways that academic departments might not be. And you know, as I kind of mentioned, there's a lot of attention coming from federal and state governments looking for all of this, you know, skills gaps and employer pathways and all of these kind of great terms that we've been hearing about. So a lot more focus on this area. But for all that, there's very little shared definitions. There's very little frameworks for how this work happens. And so it really is it is as much a Wild West as any other place might be in academia. So to dive into this idea of context, of guidance, as we talk about different topics of equity around higher education, and this is not meant to be comprehensive, it's just meant to be illustrative, right? There's a lot of different areas where we've been talking about equity, both, you know, in the last few days and broadly as a field. We've talked about it as it relates to abilities and disabilities, as it relates to financial access to learning, as it relates to excuse me, within the learning environment itself, whether that's learning outcomes or flexibility or all of those great things, and even just through access through, sorry, I have a frog in my throat, through who is coming through our doors, how do we count them, and how do we know if we're serving the right audiences? And I'm hoping what you'll notice is that all of these areas of guidance and all of these support services are typically oriented at our degree-seeking students or our credit-bearing students. And so what I'm going to challenge our group today to talk about, and we can bring this list up again if we want to refer to it later, is how does any of this apply to our non-credit seeking students, right? How do we deal with issues of supporting people who need help in their classes? Do we have, what responsibilities do we have around that? And then just go down that list. So that's the large frame of the conversation I'm hoping we're going to have today. James, I'm going to put up the slide about Mitchell if you want to take a moment to introduce who we are and why we care about this in our own unique way.
So Mitchell College is, I don't know if you guys have heard of us, probably not. We are a small liberal arts college with very much a focus on celebrating and developing the power of unique minds. We are a highly diverse campus, close to 40% students of color, well over a fourth of our students, first generation college students. About a third of our students are student athletes, and we're a pretty competitive Division III NCAA athletic teams here. And the largest slice, I suppose, related to the power of unique minds is that we have over 30% of our students with some type of neurodivergence. We have a very large population on the autism spectrum. We have a lot of students with ADHD and other kinds of neurocognitive differences, to the extent that our entire academic system is built around the supports that we provide to those students, in addition to our neurotypical students. And so when we talk about diversity and equity, we are really talking about a word that Karen and I sort of phrased last week when we were talking about this, which is the idea of neuroequity being kind of a core part of what we talk about. Now, that's not to say that other forms of equity are not essential, but that's sort of the focus that we put on a lot of the work we do. We have extensive supports for those with those neurodivergent learners. We talk about the kaleidoscope of learners in the classroom, varying from folks who are academically very, very strong, but have very little social skills, all the way through to athletes who perhaps have the higher social skills and might struggle a little academically. And we provide, we take UDL in our technology and in our online part of our systems, and we try to apply it in the classroom as well. We try to provide the kind of supports that would help everybody, which allows those neurodivergent learners to work quite well. We have within our infrastructure here, we're basically a bachelor's degree awarding institution. We don't have any master's degrees as of now. We used to be a junior college and we expanded to offer bachelor's about 30 years ago. We're fully on ground. We don't really have any extensive online platform today. We have our students mostly living on campus here in our beautiful campus in New London, Connecticut. Recently, we introduced this thing called the Mitchell Digital Hub. And Karen was hired as our director to run that and set it up. So Karen, I don't know if you want to talk a bit about the hub and sort of introduce that.
Sure thing. Yeah, so I started in September with the charge of launching our hub. It is an online professional learning entity, so it's non-credit, it's fully online, and the idea is in trying to build that type of workforce learning system, embracing the values of access, connectedness, and flexibility as much as we are able to, considering I am a shop of one. But it has really informed a lot of the decisions that we've made in terms of the design of the space, both physical and digital, and the way we've structured things. But you know, I literally turned on the website for this like last week. So this is an early exploratory space for us. And so as we're developing and launching this, trying to keep those three values front and center is really important to us, and which is why I wanted to bring this conversation to you all. We have 3 different types of courses people can take with us. There are smaller professional skills courses that are based on a lot of those, you know, effective communication and management and those kinds of things. We have courses that are intentionally aligned with specific industry certifications, and then we're also looking to develop our own courses that capitalize on those 2 types of courses and add on particular things that might relate to areas of strength or employer needs. And in order to be able to launch such a rich catalog, we are working with a content provider to get us started, which has developed some interesting challenges as it relates to this idea of equity, because we don't have control over the internals of the courses, but we do have a passion and a desire to shape the full student experience through the physical space for people who want to use it, and the digital space that all of the learners can take advantage of. And that space has things like how to be a successful online learner. So tips on things like the 6 cognitive strategies for learning, time management, stress management, those kinds of things, as well as career development tips. And as we grow, we're hoping to integrate more interactive, engaging interactive events and things like that. And I can get into more details about what the hub itself is doing, but broadly what this has led us to do is ask these kinds of larger questions. So these are what I'm bringing to the floor today. And I made a little Jamboard for it, and I'm happy to link that into the Padlet if people want that. I didn't see the Padlet till after the conference started. So these are our 3 questions. We can start with whichever one people feel most motivated to, but in a nutshell, we saw that list of all the different types of guidance as it relates to equity in our 4-credit classrooms. In what ways is it appropriate? Is it necessary? Can we apply those things within the context of workforce learning? The second is, what are the options and considerations? What does it mean to provide equity to the course outside of the courses, right? So this is what I was talking about in terms of those hub resources. And for example, if a student in our classrooms, whether digital or physical, have a diagnosis and they go to their disability services office or whatever great name your office has and gets an accommodation, right? There's a mechanism for them for getting the kind of access in their classroom that they need. Do our non-credit students have access to that service? Should they have access to that kind of service? Is there a different service that they need? Like, how do we, learners are the same learners, right? The learner that graduates from Mitchell College with a bachelor's degree, we're hoping will come back later and want to take a professional learning course with us. Do we not owe them the same kind of support that they would have gotten in our for credit classrooms? But that's not really how our institutions are often structured. kind of what are the options and considerations for that? And then the third is kind of the larger question is how do we bring this topic to our institutions and leadership and strategic conversations as it relates to this area? So those are the three questions. So let me start. It sounds like the poll is being a little hinky for us. So, oh, really? Okay. What I'm going to do is, do you all know how to do the little thumbs up? It looks like I can see everybody's face on my screen. Do you guys know how to use the gesture function on Zoom? Oh,
Would you like us to demonstrate?
I got one. All right. So the poll questions I had were, how many of your institutions, I'm gonna have to give it a minute till everyone's thumb goes away. That's hysterical. So give me a thumbs up if your institution has a continuing education division, program, arm, component. You can also give me a weird face if you're not sure, which is also fair because some people may not know. Interesting.
Are you actually asking if our institution offers workforce training?
Yes. Usually
Okay,
it's
because
under
we
a
don't call
department.
it continuing education.
What do you call it?
Career technical education.
Sure. Anything that's at non-credit aimed at career workforce development kind of work.
Oh, so you're only specifically talking about non-credit workforce education?
Yes. So this places that I've worked, this has been things like corporate training. It might be CTL, like driver's training. It could be I don't know, there's a wide range of things that these might be. So it sounds like not that many. So I don't know whether that's not that many or a lot of people aren't really sure, or everyone has forgotten how to use the thumbs up. So the second question is, for those departments, if you know, and again, not knowing, not only okay, possibly to be expected, how many of those are offering any kind of robust online offerings? And by robust, I mean more than just has a link somewhere on a website to some other vendor elsewhere. Like is embracing online as part of their career development workforce work. Cool. All right. So it sounds like for some of you, maybe even for many of you, this might be a new space to kind of be thinking about. So I'm going to pull up the Jamboard. If they don't have a vote on which question they'd like to start with, vote in any form, chat, speak up, whatever. Or I'll just pick. Don't make me have long, uncomfortable silences for you all. Nope. All right. So let me start here, and I'm going to repost the link to the Jamboard. It looks like we have a couple of new faces showing. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, and please feel free to pop off your mic and talk, or use the this little, add a little note or text thing if you want to put it onto the Jamboard. Do you think it's even appropriate? So just even just use the Peralta equity framework. I can't type. I just changed that. Oh, someone's working on it. Is it appropriate to apply the same expectations, to apply the same standards to non-credit work as we do for credit work? And if not, then why not?
Karen, I'm just going to pop in here. Because I'd love to get a discussion going. I think I can't even think of why we would consider not applying it. I mean, am I missing something? we're talking about online equity in this conference, but it's universal that this needs to apply to all sectors, unless I'm being totally dense. Please help me here.
So I don't disagree. And in fact, I would say that often, especially nowadays, folks who may not be ready for, able to afford, able to whatever, come through our doors as degree seekers, a lot of them are using these non-credit options to get certified and whatever, right? Microsoft certified, supply chain certified, to build specific skills that they need. And so if anything, I did not look, because these learners aren't tracked, it's really hard to pull up any kind of data. But I would bet that we are serving a different and perhaps wider audience with our non-credit offerings than we are with our for-credit offerings. And so I agree. I think the principles of equity should absolutely apply in this space. But if you look at our staffing models and our support models, I don't see that putting your money where your mouth is, right? I don't, like the times I have worked with workforce teams, not here, because Office of One, there is no instructional design staff available to them. I'm not aware that their learners can go into the career services department and get help thinking about their resume. I mean, I could be wrong. I would strongly invite those of you who said you have these continuing ed, workforce, whatever non-credit offices, how do your institutions handle this? Can those students come into your career services, make an appointment, and have to sit down with a counselor? If they don't have do they get a school issued ID? Can they come into the library and use it to study?
And I think it's particularly acute in an institution like ours, where almost all of the services for our regular undergrad degree students are offered on campus. And now all of a sudden we're building a new population that are really the first fully online population that we have served. And so in that situation, if one of those online students located somewhere outside of the state decided that they wanted to come and use the library, would they even be able to get into the library and use the campus? I don't really know the answer to that. And so it's particularly acute in that situation, but I'm sure it's a similar scenario in other places. Our services in the way that we set up our institutions are wrapped around our regular academic for-credit programs. And so the question is, are there comparable services that are wrapped around the non-credit? And that's the piece that I don't know if it's should it apply, but maybe it's more of a, does it? What are the practical issues that prevent it from applying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in again. I would love for some of our other participants too, but I'm thinking about past institutions that I've worked at, not where I currently am, but the continuing ed was always thought of as a marketing tool to get people into credit. So it was like, I'm going to be really candid here. Oh, this is being recorded well. It was like second-class citizens. I'm just going to say it. And I don't know, I'm not saying it's universal. It's not where I am now, but and I'm kind of getting a message that that's what our presenters are asking right now, is why aren't equivalent services available to all students who attend our institutions? Yeah.
And how do we solve it, right?
And how do we solve it? And is it merely money, right? Or is it something else? Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Again, we're all new at Mitchell, so we don't have any history of treating these learners as anything, right? Like as secondhand citizens or as clients, as Carrie mentioned in the chat. So, we're kind of looking to establish our baseline, right? And I agree. I think that one of the interesting things about particularly around the topic of neurodivergence, is that it is, I think, a lot of times historically thought about as a children's issue, and perhaps maybe only recently as a workforce issue. And that's only one of all the things, right? It just happens to be the one that, is top of mind. When our students who are in the have that go off into the workforce, they don't lose their needs for support, and they certainly don't lose those needs as learners. And certainly, UDL makes sense. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, a baseline that I would, acknowledge that it fits. But I guess I just have never heard this conversation. I don't know what happens if someone comes to your on-campus training for pipe fitting, which again isn't happening here, but happens other places, or electricians, and they have a hearing impairment and need, the people who teach those classes are often not, particularly the kind of more trade businessy classes, they're not academic faculty. They haven't been given professional development on teaching, may not even know what I'm assuming, let me even step this back. I'm not a lawyer. I am assuming that the rules about, ADA and accessibility apply in our non-credit classrooms in the same way that they might apply in our for-credit classrooms. But I will say a lot of times the hammer through which some of those rules are placed comes through things like Title IV funding rules, right? That's the mechanism by which the federal government has been able to enact some of the other kind of things that impact our classroom. And that doesn't apply, right? You can't get federal aid funding for non-credit. So the constraints also don't apply, nor does accreditation apply, right? We're accredited by NECHI in New England. And my understanding is that a handful of months ago, somebody asked them about their interest in microcredentials or something to that effect. And they said, at this time, they're not looking at anything outside the credit bearing space. That's not to say it's not coming, right? I fully anticipate in the next, I don't know how fast do accreditors move, 5 years, that people are gonna, I mean, if this micro-credential space is particularly online continues to grow at the pace that people are projecting, there's no way that accreditors and governments are not going to be paying attention to this.
So you're saying we should be scared?
I should say, I'm saying we should be practicing the great things that we already do in our academic spaces to
Right.
our spaces.
Let's talk about
And it's-
solutions. What solutions have you thought about?
Me, us,
Uh-huh.
or a group? I
Anyone?
want to know if any of you all had solutions. Anyone figured this out? Anyone have a solution?
I'll kind of chime in. At my university, we do have workforce learning certificate programs that we're launching, and we're looking to grow that space a lot because we see that that's going to be a growing area. And right now, the drive is more what the businesses are requesting from us, and to build that partnership with the business. And so I guess you could say they're the ones, like, because their employees are the ones taking these courses, they're going to be the ones that are advocating the most. And in some cases, there isn't an actual instructor. It's like a module course that they take that doesn't have someone going in and actually teaching the lesson online, but it's content that we're providing them. And so I guess that's where we see it right now, that what's really driving it is the business that's requesting the content from us.
So do they ever request anything related to these equity principles? Does that come through that conversation?
Yes, somewhat. Not so much with like disability services, but with UDL, our courses have been set up so that they can be viewed as a podcast. They can be viewed on their phones. They can be viewed by video. So we're like trying to make sure that we're providing multiple means of viewing the content, because we know these employees taking these courses might just be on their phone in the break room. They don't have a lot of time. They might be driving somewhere and just want to listen. And from surveys we get from students based on that, we see that different students are going to use different tools to engage with the material. So we are trying to make sure that we're providing multiple ways to access the content in the courses. And then a big piece as far as the assessments go, end up working with, there's lots of things that say work with your manager, because we know that they're all at their company. Talk to your manager about these and have a reflection with your manager, and so forth, as far as that like reflective and assessment piece towards the end of the course.
Thank you.
I think building on that a little bit, one of the challenges I think somebody mentioned before is the idea that a lot of institutions might use this kind of non-credit capability as a kind of a marketing, almost like a loss leader. We put this out there and people take this course, but our major goal is not necessarily the content of the course and delivery of the course. That of course has to be good as a marketing tool, but the goal is to get people to sign up for credit work, for credit courses. Now, if that's the case, does that change our thinking about the whole equity question, or does that continue to be the same? And it's just something we have to, perhaps now we have to think about how do we build that into our marketing beyond just building it into the content of the courses themselves. It's the things that wrap around the course that I start to get nervous about in that space.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly, I mean, I have reasonable confidence that the content provider that we're utilizing their catalog follows general accessibility principles in their design, right? But and it sounds like whether you're building it yourself, Janelle, or whether you're using somebody else's course, that's similar, that it's predominantly a content distribution kind of course. But I think if if COVID has taught us or reinforced nothing, it is that there is more to learning than just reading content, right? So it's, trying to figure out how to provide that, all those kinds of things. I don't know. It's fascinating. I know it's uncomfortable and difficult, but I think it's really important. What do we have? Does anyone have, I mean, I've seen grants to support people covering the costs. I mean, it's cheaper to get a certification than to get a degree, but it's not cheap. I mean, most of the courses that lead to certification that I'm offering do not cost what's sitting in my couch cushions, right? That I can necessarily comfortably dispose of in a month. So the vendor that we're working with has one of those micro loan options for people. There's, our state has has WIOA, which I will not remember what the name of it is, but has the ability for unemployed and underemployed individuals to take advantage of state funding to pay for training that we can list some of our programs with. So that helps with some of the financial access issues. It doesn't help everybody, but it's a start. And certainly employer pay makes a difference. That's one of the reasons we're also looking to partner with employers and think about that kind of thing. No one's asking me to collect data on who our learners are. It's certainly part of our plan to have a more extensive onboarding interview, survey, form thing. I mean, it's not an application, right? But like going out and finding out who it is that wants to take our classes, so we can be able to report out on some of the demographic kind of data. If you went to the website, we have multiple means of getting in touch with somebody. Somebody is generally me. If you have questions, on the plan is to set up academic coaching through essentially by appointment, kind of as think of it as like an adjunct gig job kind of thing, that maybe our existing academic coaches or other people who have those abilities, people could make an appointment with them and get that support. I mean, lots of ideas. We're kind of waiting to see what makes sense in the implementation, but I guess, maybe just go ahead.
I was going to say one of the equivalents, if you think about the regular classroom, is tutoring services. And so we have a tutoring center here where kids can go and get access to tutors if they need extra support. And we routinely bring those tutors into the classroom to embed them in the classroom as needed for particular types of sessions within a course. I'm teaching a course right now that has a final thesis paper. In the last 2 weeks of the semester, I've had writing tutors sitting in the classroom with my students, going around and helping them with their final papers. And that's a pretty normal thing for us to do here at Mitchell College. And I think many colleges do a similar sort of thing. How does that work in an online workforce situation? You've got a situation where somebody needs additional support like that. How could we deliver that for them? How could we set that up? Are other institutions, I guess, thinking about that? Is that part of this infrastructure that we're setting up?
And who pays for it? I mean, just to get back down to brass tacks, right? I would love to have a staff team of support people, but you know, right now I'm trying to make sure I can pay my own salary before we can start growing out other people. I don't know.
I mean, it's just a very specific question there, Karen, you just put in the chat. What about office hours? How does that work in that environment? Is that something we've even thought about? It's a whole other layer. AI, right?
So maybe the way I can get some free consulting. Do any of you have interesting approaches, novel approaches, particularly successful approaches to student success within your academic spaces that you are familiar with, that you think might apply in this context, that isn't kind of the standard, you know, tutoring, library services, career services, disability services, advising, like those kind of typical offices? You are a very quiet bunch. Or I will also challenge you with this question. What were you hoping to get out of this session that we did not touch on? Was there a question you came in here wondering about that either we can touch on or that the rest of the group might be able to respond to? I feel like the silent extension has to include people typing in chat.
Karen, I put a link to Wellness Central, which is a Canvas course, an open Canvas course that provides incredible wellness and support services in a lot of arenas to all the California community colleges.
Nice.
And that's self-paced, and I believe you can download it from Canvas Commons to get a sense of something that is. It costs some money to develop, obviously, but it is, you know, as far as utilization, it's certainly paid its way.
Nice. I'll take a look at it. I mean, we created a Moodle space that all of our learners will get enrolled into.
Mm-hmm.
And have just started populating that with different types of things. So yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. The Andre's picture has him waving all the time, and I keep thinking he's just it's such a friendly little picture. I love it. All right. Have I made you all uncomfortable? Which might ultimately have been the goal of the session, was to just be, oh yeah, we hadn't thought about that. I feel like I'm gonna break into teacher mode and start calling on people. Well, so Aisha, thank you for sharing that. What I think is kind of interesting about the way that you phrase that is that it probably still applies, right? That, you know, the staff and faculty of the institution also probably have these same questions, that if they're trying to do their own professional learning. I mean, I certainly think that there are likely to be people who are Mitchell staff and faculty who may want to go, and I've heard conversation, that we have a data analytics boot camp that I anticipate there's going to be some interest in folks taking. There's some, there's a number of things that I suspect. And they would also be, when the world is open, when anybody can take the course, right? Everybody is your audience. But thank you for sharing that.
An interesting conundrum, because from the outside perspective, and we hear this from our state government fairly frequently, and I'm sure all states are thinking the same thing, we hear about the skills shortages that are out in the space and how, all of us in higher ed are just not doing a very good job of providing graduates who have particular skills. And so the solution might be these workforce programs similar to what we're trying to do with the hub, that are popping up all over the place. And you read about it. There has been articles in higher ed and in other places. But I just don't feel like we've cracked the nut about how to do that in an effective way as an institute of higher ed. And I think the equity question is a huge part of that. We spend so much time making sure that our courses are set up in such a way that we provide that equitable learning. Whereas the workforce space is almost like the Wild West, and we're coming into it as a new. I use the Wild West in no pejorative way to those of you on the West Coast, to really try to focus in on how do we come up with a more equitable and professional way of doing workforce development in that very specific space. And I think as institutes of higher ed, we have this experience of doing this, and we need to find a way that we can take the leadership role. And to me, that's the piece that's missing from all of this, is who is taking the leadership role. Because I'm sorry, if it's I don't know, Skillsoft, or again, no disrespect to Skillsoft, or another private entity that's doing it in a for-profit way, equity is only going to be required if the law says it's required. Where I think many of us on the higher ed side, we want to do this for positive reasons, not just because we're required to do it because the attorneys tell us. I hate to see the space where we actually end up seeing is sort of a rush to the bottom, a flight from quality as opposed to a flight to quality in this space. And so I don't know how we get to a point where we take leadership on this, but it seems to me that that's the space that we need to get to. I'd love to hear folks' thoughts on that in the last couple of minutes.
Yeah, and I just want to add that we put a slide on the Jamboard we did not anticipate getting solutions at the end of this 45 minutes, but we are open to starting a conversation. So if you would like to I don't know where that conversation will happen, but if you would like to find out when we set something up, by all means, put your name and email on slide 4.
I wanted to thank you both for a very provocative series of questions. I don't know if I'm the only one, but you have got me thinking about so many different things that 45 minutes ago I was not thinking about, and I appreciate it in enormous ways. And I was like, oh my, how could I have been in this field for so long and been so narrow-minded? And I appreciate the discomfort I am feeling right now, because I am. Thank you both.
I'll take that as a plus.
It is a plus.
Yeah, as I said, I was an instructional designer at a prior institution, and they needed help in workforce developing something for online, which is the only reason they came and asked for help. And I just realized we had an entirely different view of what teaching and learning and responsibility, like the whole thing, right? The whole approach was wildly different. And while I agree, Janelle, that a lot of times we let employers drive the boat on a lot of this, there has to be a place for us to bring our expertise to the table, not only in content, but also in effectiveness of teaching and learning. And I don't know if they're willing to contribute to that, to be a part of that conversation, or we just say that's the way we do our business, but yeah. Well, thank you for folks who gave us comments in the chat, and I did see some activity on the Jamboard, which is great. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's very nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you both. Bye-bye.
Bye.